Welcome to EchoCast and welcome Christopher Truelove. Chris is an assistant professor and a program director for the respiratory therapy program at Augusta University, and he's also a neonatal specialist and NICU coordinator at the doctor's hospital at Augusta. So kind of double duty. Most people, if they have a moonlighting gig, it's like at retail, so they get discounts. This guy's like pretty hardcore. Chris's clinical roots run deep, working as a registered respiratory therapist for almost 20 years before coming back to Augusta University, where now, in addition to teaching, he's also earning his PhD in applied health science. So we're very excited to have him here today as a 2022 Echo 360 E3 Impact Grant Award winner, and to have him share the work that he'll be leading to record learner skills with Echo Video, which is a great application of the technology to not only consume content, but also measure comprehension. And so we're excited to see how that work is now poised to evolve and advance further. And so with that, welcome, Chris Truelove. Hey, Chris.
Hey, good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here, and I can't wait to dig in to what you're going to be doing down there at Augusta University. But before we hear more on what is kind of next in this effort to kind of sort of measure things that have maybe been unmeasured heretofore, if you will, why don't you give us a little bit of background on just how Augusta University and has been using Echo Video prior? You've got a neat kind of perspective as both an instructor and also as a learner, so you've kind of seen it from both ends. So why don't you just give us a little bit of background on how the school has been using Echo Video so far?
Sure, of course. Well, let me start out from the student perspective, because that was my first introduction to the Echo 360 system. And so Augusta University has adopted Echo 360, the video recording software, the video software, as our main distance learning platform. And we use it, interestingly enough, not just for distance learning, but for our on-campus courses as well. And so oftentimes professors will record their courses live on the day of delivery, and then allow that to upload directly into the Echo 360 cloud for the students to then view at a later time if they have any questions or want to go back and review any information. And so my first experience with Echo 360 was exactly that, was a professor who used the system to record his live lectures. And then if I wanted to go back and view the lecture again, I had that capacity, I had that capability to go back and watch the lecture. I had a question here, let me go to that section right there and re-listen to what he said. And usually it was great for clarification purposes. The second experience I had with Echo 360 was a professor who used it for an online course. And so these were pre-recorded lectures. They were already in the cloud. He had the entire semester's worth of lectures in the system. And so I went through and I would watch the lectures as I was able to, as the schedule was posted, watch the lecture, take the quiz, watch the lecture, take the quiz, watch the lecture, do the assignment. And so it gave me the freedom to advance in the course at my own speed. And so that was certainly a very useful and a very great application of the Echo 360 system. From there, my next level of exposure was the Echo 360 system from the professor's side, so from the instructor side. Now, personally, I am the instructor who likes to use Echo 360 to record my live lectures and post them for the students for later use. Additionally, if there's a subject area where I feel the students are weak in and I need to give them a boost in that area, I do tend to record a short 10 to 15 minute, what I call booster session or booster information video, where I kind of touch base on that subject where I see them lacking and give them additional resources, perhaps re-explain something that they apparently didn't quite understand, or perhaps that I didn't explain very well the first time through. Or this is probably my most favorite application of it, is actually using Echo 360 in combination with my iPad, because I actually record myself writing on my iPad. and actually doing, so we do a lot of calculations in our program. And so I can actually record myself doing these calculations, talking about the calculations in crystal clear format, no having to squint and look at what's on the board,
Yeah.
nothing. It's right there on the tablet, record myself, and then I upload that into the Echo 360 cloud, disperse it to the students, and they can go back and watch me perform those calculations over and over and over until they're comfortable with those calculations themselves. And that
Yeah.
has probably been my most favorite application of the system that I've never been able to duplicate with any other system.
Yeah.
Additionally, I've used it for during the pandemic. We that was our main system of delivery. We used it for live lectures, and it was a fantastic application at the time.
Yeah, you mentioned the specific detail of as an instructor, really, with the iPad and showing your work and really getting into that level of detail. Is something like that, and maybe it's not even a conscious effort, but how much of that do you think is sort of inspired by your own experience as a learner, and so as you're now thinking as an instructor, what are the kinds of things that maybe other instructors, not out of malice, obviously, maybe don't think about, to really, kind of sort of double click into the technology and really get into a little bit more of that level of specificity. Because as a learner, you maybe were sitting there going, gosh, if I'd love to see a little, like you say, not have to squint so much or whatever. How much of that is a conscious effort, do you think? Or is it just, you've just been around the system so long now that it's a little almost more intuitive on what it can do?
Well, I think it's actually twofold. So let me start out with the first half of your question with, did I approach this from a experiences as a student? And I most certainly did, and I'll tell you exactly where. So my background, in addition to respiratory therapy being my professional degree, I actually have a background in high-level mathematics, analysis, application, real analysis, things, calculus, things of that nature. And back in the day, the way that you did online learning is, or trying to go back and view a video over a subject that you had questions on, is you got on YouTube and you crossed your fingers and hoped that some university out there somewhere recorded their professors using a video camera and uploaded it to YouTube. The problem is that usually these recordings were done from the back of a 500 student lecture hall, trying to zoom in on the whiteboard. And some of these professors would use chalk, and chalk doesn't show up very well on a blackboard or a green board on a video recording from 20 years ago. Or if it was a whiteboard, half the markers never work anyway, so you couldn't do the work to begin with. So part of my frustration was I want to see their thought process as they work through the problems, and you couldn't see that
Mhm.
through those methods. And so now to kind of jump into the second part of your question, I am definitely an individual who believes in hybridizing education from a online and in-person perspective. And so even though all of our courses are performed in person, there is a good percentage of it that is also given quote unquote online. And what I mean by that is exactly what I said before. I'm not going to teach the calculations here in class in person the first time. I'm going to upload a video, have you guys go watch it first, then come to class with questions once you've been able to practice a couple of these questions. And part of it is because the system has become so intuitive to me, and I love exploring the platform. It's such a powerful system. Even delivering lectures through the Echo 360 system, where students, especially when we've got distance learning students, they can raise their hand in the
Mhm.
Echo 360 system, and I can see it on my screen, say, yes, what's your question? Or they can flag an area where they have questions, and I can see exactly where we need to address items. So yes, part of it is in fact that I have just become so intimately associated with the program and the platform that it is intuitive in nature. And I try to encourage my fellow faculty members to do the same things because it
Yeah.
benefits the students. And at the end of the day, they're what matters.
Yeah, well, and you speak so well about the remote learning and hybridizing kind of learning. We as working with us for so long, we talk a lot about equity in education and giving all students kind of an equal shot at learning and being engaged, regardless of location, learning style, technologies. I would have to imagine that as an instructor now, you're seeing sort of the dividends, or at least the opportunities for all types of learners to now engage with your material, regardless again of either physical, kind of location, or sometimes even just confidence and in speaking up and kind of engaging in a class. Have you seen that as an instructor now?
Yes, and you hit it right on the nose when you were talking about the equity towards the student. And I view that in perhaps a slightly different way than other professors do. But the way that I view it is that not the equity that I tend to view is that not every student learns the same way. So, of course, I have my teaching methods. That doesn't mean every student is responsive to my teaching methods. That doesn't mean every student is responsive in the classroom. That doesn't mean every student can comprehend it on the first go around. That doesn't mean that every student has the ability to make it to every class necessarily, although they should, we hope so, but some of them just simply can't. Or they have a doctor's appointment, or their car breaks down, or any other number of issues that you could choose to look at. But my philosophy on it is, look, I'm going to record my lectures for you so that it doesn't matter if your kid was sick, if your car broke down, if you stayed up half the night with a stomach bug and had no mental capacity. You were here physically, but mentally you were not here.
Yeah.
So the equity to me is in the opportunity to learn the material regardless of what your status is at that given moment. We as I'm sure people can relate to, we live in a time where everything is hectic, day to day, just day to day work, the traffic to get to somewhere, whatever it may be. Being mentally capable of studying and learning the material in lecture, and we're talking about a medical profession here, we're talking about people's lives at the end of the day, and I'm not going to jeopardize a patient's life just because my student was sick last night, wasn't able to understand the concept during lecture, and then tell them, hey, well, look, that was lecture, you're not going to hear it again, you need to go
Right.
study or find another resource. No, I don't believe in that whatsoever. So the equity to me is, look, I'm going to give you all the opportunity to have access to my lectures at any time in any place, whether it's a computer, the mobile app, it doesn't matter where, and to give them the opportunity to listen and learn to my lectures at their convenience.
Yeah, no, so true. I mean, the stakes in every subject area, the stakes are very high, but especially in what you're training and dealing with. I mean, it's not about just compliance and checking a box and getting it done. So, which actually leads really well into this really interesting work that you're going to be doing now to take the technology and the platform and not turn it on its head, but really, I think it might seem obvious to some, but what you're going to be doing to now sort of tilt the lens, if you will, to now utilize the technology to record learners and demonstrating what they're learning. So maybe talk a little bit about kind of where that inspiration came from, and how, I mean, obviously from an evidence kind of standpoint, it's going to be reaping a lot of good dividends for you on that regard as well.
Of course. So the idea has been in formation for, I would say, probably 5 or so years, where we identified a deficit in, we would have students, we would have different levels of performance for the laboratory. So previously we've been talking about lecture. So this is in a laboratory setting. We had differences in performance across the board for all the students in the lab class. And we tried to identify why, what is so different here? And we came to the realization, well, number one, some students are able to pay more attention during lab. Some students sat more at the front versus sitting in the back. So during the demonstrations, some students perhaps didn't see every aspect of what we were showing, and they didn't come up to us later on and ask. And so we just noticed that there was a little bit of a deficit in the instruction to the student. So that's the first place, instruction to the student in terms of the laboratory skills. And they did have a textbook that explained some things. But the first thing we did is we actually went through and we said, okay, look, we have to standardize what these students are being asked to do. So the first thing that we created about 5 years ago are what we call these competency sheets. So we took their textbook and we created a literal step-by-step guide for 100, and I believe we're up to 165 skills now. For each 165 skills, we created a step-by-step procedure list for these students to standardize their learning so that we would ask all the students in the program to do the same thing. So that was step number one. Step number two was to give them a better equity of instruction. So that's where another place where equity comes in.
Yeah.
So we as faculty members started recording ourselves performing these tasks and providing them in the Echo Cloud for the student to go, okay, here's competency number 65. Let's say it's taking vital signs. Let me go watch the video of my very own professors performing these skills using the competency sheet that they have been provided with. So that was implementation number two, which was, watching the professors do the skill we just asked them to do. Then we decided to implement a third part, which is the students practicing the skills and how to ensure they were practicing them correctly. And so we developed this thing called peer competencies. And what it is we would make the students go in groups of three. You had the person simulating the respiratory therapist, a person simulating a patient, and a person being an outside observer of the skill. And so the one performing the respiratory therapy skill would provide the therapy to the one acting as a patient, with the observer on the back end making notes and trying to justify and give recommendations and notes to the students, both the therapist and the patient, on improvements on what they did that time. And so the students were expected to work together in groups of three and to check each other off. Check each other off. That was the key phrase. To check each other off prior to their major competency exams with us, the faculty. We identified another deficit here. They were simply supposed to sign off that they had witnessed each other doing these skills. And as much as I hate to admit it, we came to the realization that students weren't actually performing these peer competencies. They would simply pass the papers around the table and sign each other off. So as much as it hurts my heart to admit that, we found out about it. And we really sat down and we said, how in the world can we avoid this issue? And so what we came up with was this idea to have the students, instead of just observing each other, record each other and submit that recording to us, and then we could, kind of grade it on the end. This is where an issue was identified. Now, we have on average between 20 and 25 students per cohort, and we invite a cohort every fall. We have 4 lab classes throughout the program, with starting in the fall semester. Actually, I take that back. We have 6 lab courses in 4 semesters. And so what ended up happening is we came to the realization we don't have a way to grade 165 skills for 25 students within the individual lab time frames. Like, that's just impossible from a time perspective. So we said, if you guys submit the recordings to us, then we can grade them on our own time. We have a TA who can help us to grade them. We can grade them at 11 o'clock at night. We can grade them at 9 in the morning. We can grade at 11 in the afternoon on a Saturday or a Sunday. So it really comes to benefit us as professors because we could grade whenever we wanted to. Mm-hmm. Then we ran into a technological issue of how in the world do we even implement this idea? And so our first idea was to record with phones and then have them airdrop it to us and put it in a Dropbox on our internal intranet. That was a horrible idea. It didn't work whatsoever. So then the next idea came actually in, well, hold on, we've got this powerful recording platform that we as faculty members use to record our lectures. Why can't we flip it on its head and have the students record themselves and upload it directly to the clouds? And so after some investigation and talking with IT, we realized that this was a possibility. Each student each student is given their own Echo 360 account. And we didn't realize this at first. And so they can record themselves and upload it to their own clouds, which for us was just incredible. So the students log into a computer with Echo 360 into the cloud. It has the platform already on the desktop. All they need is a webcam, and they can record themselves doing whatever they want to, hit done. It submits it to the cloud. And then we use Brightspace LMS D2L. And in D2L, you can link an Echo 360 video from your personal cloud to an assignment box. And so instead of uploading a physical video 3-4 times, all we're doing is sharing a link, but within Brightspace. Hey, sorry, I think I cut out there for a second.
Yep.
But in the Echo 360, in the D2L system, we can simply link the video and a rubric and watch the video, grade them in the rubric, watch the video, grade them in a rubric. It's the most fantastic thing ever.
Yeah.
And so then we said, well, this is great, but the students need a resource to be able to actually perform this from a physical, technological perspective. And that's where the Echo grant came into play. And we said, this is fantastic because we can apply for this grant, see if we can get the equipment to provide the students with a dedicated dedicated hardware for recording their competency skills. So they weren't relying on their phones, their own computers, things like that. And so what we've done to do is created the budget to buy these mobile laptop stations, which would enable or will enable the students to roll them around to where they need to go, record the videos, hit upload, and that computer's sole purpose is for the recording of these peer competencies.
Yeah, no, I love it so much. And for a lot of folks, maybe it would seem, obvious, but I think, and not only does it deliver on what you said earlier about the equity, providing kind of that level playing field, it's obviously going to be producing a lot of evidence for yourself and your TAs that are going to be poring over all this video kind of documentation, but it's also engaging. It's also, that 30 that we talk about here around, having, engaging tactics to inspire learners. By nature of having now this, it's kind of like a video lab within your lab. It's providing that extra level of engagement for your learners to hopefully kind of get the content soaking in even more. So I think it's great, and I'm sure all your personal Dropbox accounts are very grateful that you're not taking in mobile phone videos now. It's much more kind of organized. So how has this? Where are we in the sort of the arc of this idea? Are we still kind of in the planning stage? Have students been exposed to this yet, or where are we? Just kind of
we are implemented.
Awesome.
So we have the mobile recording stations and the students use them. We need to upgrade some of the parts. Our first purchases may have not been the best purchases, but we like a little snake arm for the camera. It didn't really work. So we're trying to find better parts for some of these things, but we have the independent computers. We have the dedicated computers and the mobile carts to move these things around. And it's been incredible because one thing that we noticed is, and I don't know if the students realize that we see this, but every time they record a video, they're doing, and this is what we wanted to happen, they're watching themselves and they're recognizing where they make errors. And so the great thing about this is they don't have to submit the first video they record, right? So they make an error and they're like, oh, I got to re-record this and not make that mistake. And so they make a second video and they make a slightly different mistake. They're like, oh, okay, hold on. So they make a third video and they might make a slightly different mistake, or they're like, no, I need to do that better. So we've gotten some submissions on the peer competencies where it's like attempt 7, attempt 8, attempt 9. And we asked them, it's like, why did you make 9 attempts? And it's like, well, every time we watched it, we realized we were doing something else wrong or not as well as we could have. And their skill levels have skyrocketed.
Awesome.
Something that we in the past had an issue with is when we provided them with these competency examinations where they came in and performed the tasks on us in a simulated patient environment. Sometimes that you could tell they just hadn't practiced the skills enough. And we were like, why aren't you practicing? Like, well, we did practice, but their level of practicing wasn't quite where it had to be. But
Yeah.
now that they're having to record each other um, and watch the videos before they submit them, they themselves, because they have that competency sheet, they themselves are recognizing their own errors. So we're touching into metacognition now. They're recognizing their own errors before submitting their submissions videos to us, and we're giving them less, how do you say this, we're giving them less low grades
Hmm.
because they're practicing more by
Sure.
nature of having to go watch their own videos.
Sure.
And so it's been a huge improvement. um, and the skill sets, I think, have improved to a much higher degree, even in the few months that it's been implemented.
Yeah. Well, and like you said earlier, and that's the whole point. It's not about checking the box, turning in the assignment, just to get it off the to-do list or off the plate. It's about actually learning. And as you're also talking about it, it's reminding me a little bit of like football teams watching game film. I
Mhm.
mean, the film doesn't lie. I mean, you're watching yourself perform in a game setting, and you learn so much from actually not just hearing about how you're doing, but actually seeing yourself do something and then learning how to do it differently. So I think it's fantastic. Chris, we always end our EchoCast or sort of start landing the plane in our EchoCast episodes by asking our guests, kind of what's that one sort of we call it an inspiration point. What's that one lesson or one piece of advice that you might give a peer who might be considering or maybe facing a similar issue that you're facing here? But anyway, to take us home here, what would be that one sort of inspiration point that you'd want to leave our viewers with here today?
I think probably the biggest inspiration point for me is, and I'm still learning this myself, but I've found it to be more often true than not true, which is there are thousands of resources out there, and we may not always be aware of these resources. For instance, I would have never imagined that Echo 360 had a grant system and such a powerful platform and such powerful partners and such an opportunity to even implement something of this nature. And as anywhere, money is always an issue. But I would have never in my years of teaching imagined that Echo 360 would be the one to give me the solution that I needed. Um, just simply because I thought it was just a video recording platform. But the more that I explored it and the more that I asked questions and the more that I looked into it and the more that I just like, you know what? I don't know if I'll get this grant, but I'm going to apply for it anyway and just be honest about what I want to do. And when I got that email, I'll be honest, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, I would have never imagined that this would have been something that they would have chosen to use for. But then the more that I talk to the people for you at you guys at Echo 360, the more that I realize this is exactly the kind of thing that you guys are for exactly. And I just would have never known that unless I reached out. So I guess my biggest point of inspiration is to anybody. It doesn't matter if you're a student or a professor or a clinician, it doesn't matter. Reach out to to people who can provide you with the assistance that you may need. And even if the biggest thing that I say is the worst thing they can tell you is no. Like, no, we can't do that. No, this is impossible. And it's like, okay, that's fine. I'll go find another solution. But there's always a solution, but we will never find them if we don't go out and ask. And that's exactly what I did. And I've received my return, return of investment has been so much higher than I would have ever imagined.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, just simply because I went out there and I asked and I put myself out there, not knowing what may happen. And so I think that's my greatest point of inspiration is just the more that I do it, the more I tell people, look, just try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But what's the harm in trying? You're hurting yourself more by not trying than you are by trying.
Yeah, well, and there are blessedly and thankfully there are a lot of folks out there, a lot of organizations and institutions, individuals that are aligned in our mission. And so I agree. It doesn't hurt to ask. And
No.
We're very, very honored and grateful to be supporting your work. So anyway, want to thank you, Chris, for joining us here on this episode of EchoCast and all the work that you're leading there at Augusta. We're super proud to support this work. Can't wait to see how it all kind of unrolls and unveils itself over the next few months. And I want to thank all of you also for tuning in, whether it was live right now or if you're watching this a little bit later. If you can check out this episode and all the EchoCast episodes on our website, and along with a lot of other resources that you can employ to do the same kinds of stuff that Chris is doing down there at Augusta University. Thanks a lot again for joining us, Chris, and we will speak to you soon.
Sounds great. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for tuning in to EchoCast. For more information on these and other inspired learning solutions, visit us at echo360.com.